Shalom Bethel family. It's time once again for our review of the Shabbat Torah discussion from this past week. And this past week was a special Shabbat known as Shabbat Nachamu. Shabbat Nachamu is the Shabbat that immediately follows Tisha B'Av. It is the Shabbat of comfort. Tisha B'Av, we spoke about last week, is our darkest day, the day when we commemorate so many tragedies that befell the Jewish people. And on Shabbat Nachamu, now we begin our recovery. It's actually very beautiful. Nachamu is the first of 7 Haftorahs of comfort, they're called. And they connect the 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av to Rosh Hashanah. And so there's this sense that there's a healing process that leads us from our tragedies to tshuva, and ultimately on the high holidays to return. Tshuva means to return. We use it as repentance, but they're connected, right? And so there's this idea that through the recovery of from our bad times, we come to this return to God. Very, very beautiful idea. And this past Shabbat was the first of these 7 Shabbatot that will get us to Rosh Hashanah. And we were looking at the Parsha. The Parsha is Ve'et Hanan. And we were looking at this idea of comfort and this idea of the Parsha, how they might be connected. You can see if you look at the source sheet that I had the link to on the email, you'll see I put a few pictures. There's a picture of a flood in Louisiana. There's a picture of a house burning down in San Bernardino in California in a wildfire. I watched these images this week, and I could only think of Unatana Tokef, the famous poem from the High Holidays, right, that asks, who by water and who by fire? And there it was, all on our TVs this week. And then I threw on there this haunting image of this child who was a Syrian refugee. Just horrible. You look at this image, and your soul just hurts. So there was this connection through who by water, who by fire to the high holidays, just like Parshat Nachamu. But there was also this sense of, when we see such devastation around us, when people who are going through their normal everyday lives, and then just like that, it's uprooted. There's this sense of how do we find comfort? Is there a secret within the text from Shabbat Nachamu to help us? I was thinking about that, and I was reading the Parsha, and there's a passage from this week's Parsha that always just strikes me as peculiar, and it stands out. It's the second one on your source sheet from the Parsha, Deuteronomy 4:22. And it's Moshe. He's recounting his to the people what they had been through in the desert, and he mentions that, and the Lord was angry with me because of you. And he swore that I would not cross the Jordan and that I would not come into the good land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I will die in this land. I will not cross the Jordan. You, however, will cross and you will possess this good land. It's Deuteronomy 4:21 and 22. Now, if you recall the incident, we spoke about this on Shabbat, but if you recall the incident that kept Moshe from being allowed into the Holy Land, you'll recall that it was when he hit the rock twice, as was pointed out in our discussion. God asked him merely to speak to a rock, and instead he struck the rock because this showed a lack of faith. As a leader, he had a higher standard of faith. Ultimately, he was not allowed to go into the promised land. But that was his sin, right? That was his action. And as people reading the Torah about our greatest sage, our greatest leader, the one who had the strength of character to stand up to Moses, to stand up to Pharaoh, the one who had the strength of purpose to lead the people through the desert, the one who could climb up on Mount Sinai and call to God, and God answered in a cloud of thunder to make the revelation happen, that this leader, there's a sense that I want him to own his sin. I want him to own his mistake, not to say, and the Lord was angry with me because of you, but the Lord was angry with me because of what I did, because of my mistake. And it's so basic. It's the one thing, I always laugh. In America, we're very forgiving people. We expect our leaders to make mistakes, but we expect them to own them. Nothing gets more under our skin than when they don't. So what's going on here? How could Moses, our greatest sage, not be able to own and take responsibility for his own mistake? Well, to figure it out, I want to look at the text, the first text on your page. That's the beginning of this week's Haftorah, Shabbat Nachamu. Haftorah Nachamu. It's from Isaiah, chapter 40, verses 1 through 5. At this point in the book of Isaiah, up until here, it's been a very harsh book, very critical of the people, predicting the doom that was to come. And then here, suddenly, Isaiah changes for the rest of the book, and he becomes a prophet of comfort. If you go to the third voice, where does comfort come from? If you go to the third verse, the comfort comes from a voice calls, in the desert, clear the way of the Lord, straighten out in the wilderness a highway of our God. Every valley shall be raised, and every mountain and hill shall be lowered, and the crooked terrain shall become a plain, and the close mountains a champaign. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see that the mouth of the people spoke. So this is where comfort comes from. What is it? In the desert, clear the way of the Lord, straighten out the wilderness, a highway for our God, right? What brings us comfort after the destruction, after the disaster, is an understanding of our direction forward, and that God is clearing the way for that direction. That's what this Haftorah is about, and that's a strong message to us when we are in need of comfort and healing. It's when we don't know our way forward. It's when we don't have that sense of purpose that ultimately we feel lost and wandering and don't know what to do next. I added another text from Isaiah 57, 18 to 19. You'll see it has a similar theme. I have seen his ways and will heal him. I will lead him also and requite with comforts him and his mourners. Peace, peace to him that is far off and to him that is near, saith the Lord that createth the fruit of the lips. I will heal him. Right, so where does this peace come from? Because I will lead him. Because I will show him the way. That's where the comfort comes from. And that's ultimately what leads Moses at this point in his storied career to this huge mistake of not being willing to own and take responsibility for his sin. Right? Where is Moses in his career? He's at the end. He's at the end. And there is nothing for him to do, no sense of purpose. He's completed his purpose. He led the people through the desert, and now here he is at the very end. He's got one sermon left in him. Right? He's going to give the people their advice. But besides that, he's lost. Besides that, he doesn't know the way forward. And when we don't know the way forward, when we don't have that sense of purpose, we can't find the comfort. We can't find our moral compass. We can't take that responsibility for our actions. It's a powerful, powerful message in that of where we find comfort as we recover from our wounds and our hurts. And that ultimately it is seeking our sense of purpose, and that beautiful sense of purpose that Judaism gives us. The purpose of tikkun olam, of making the world better. The purpose of bringing holiness into the world. The purpose of healing those who are ill. Of righting injustices, of taking care of the sick and the orphan and the poor, all those things that are the backbone of what it means to be Jewish. It's in that sense of purpose where healing comes. And so as we move forward through these 7 weeks of comfort towards the high holidays, this is our time to recognize our purpose and to check and see if we're fulfilling it. Are we living the life God intended us to live? Do we have a sense of mission and purpose that comes from deep down inside, from our neshama? Because only when we have that sense will we arrive at the high holidays able to do the important work ahead. Not only the work of healing, but the work of finding our way forward and knowing ultimately that we are back on the right path as we approach the next year ahead. And so I wish you well on your journey. I wish you always to hear that voice of your neshama, always telling you the way forward. And I wish you a Shavua Tov, a very good week. Hope to see you in Shul this Shabbos.